Hello. Today I would like to discuss my marketing research proposal consisting of virtual teams. It's presented by Corey McCall, part of California Intercontinental University, Marketing 645 2019 CT7, with our instructor Dr. Ashley Castle, November 3rd, 2019. So the agenda. In this agenda, we're going to go over a brief history and definition of virtual teams, the overview of a problem that virtual teams are having today, objectives and target audiences, marketing and research technique that's being used in the proposal, data resources, a sampling strategy, primary data collection and analysis, the estimated timeline and costs that's going to be in to gather resources and sampling information to understand virtual teams and understand the success of them. The ethical considerations, further considerations, and then we're going to open it up to questions and answers. Okay. So in a brief history of virtual teams, we're looking at prehistoric times. We're talking about the nomadic times. So we're going back to, back in times where there were tribes, maybe of Indians, there were tribes of people, and basically the hunters that were in those tribes back then, they were provided information on how the survival of the tribe would go forth from the chief. And they would have special information from the chief, because usually the hunters would go out and get the particular resources or food necessary to keep the tribe surviving, or the necessary resources for building. So the chief would convey that information. So that's sort of like how a virtual team started, or the beginning stages of virtual teams management. Then we're going to go over to the industrial era. During that time, we had organizational structures in companies. And certain organizations, or should I say certain structures within the organization, were able to get information conveyed because they would probably bring information or money into the organization more for the vitality of the company. So information from leadership would get conveyed more to those areas that were bringing in more for the viability of the company rather than the overhead structures. When we're coming to the 21st century, the 21st century is basically looking at big organizations or even small ones, and they're actually looking to keep the organization's viability going and actually enhance the viability of the organization. And in doing that, they have talent that's within inside with certain capabilities, or they may have a partnering organization and may have a collaboration with. And if they do have that, then basically we're talking about basically those guys actually having capabilities that we can use as well, or a company can use as well, in order to form a virtual team of competent individuals to handle a certain project or product development that a company wishes to partake in. So history the definition of virtual teams is looking at them to be small temporary groups, meaning temporary groups usually working on some kind of project or product development that's geographically spaced. Or sometimes they might be in the same department, or so to say actually same building, but many times even if they are, those guys are not really collaborating as much as far as they're seeing each other. It's more likely they're being used for a particular project, and they're having their own work that they're working on separately for being on a virtual team to work on a project. So a lot of times they're geographically spaced, meaning that they're disparate. They're somewhere else, maybe in the United States, or maybe somewhere else around the world that's within the organization's structure. Also, we're talking about them electronically communicating. So it's usually some kind of electronic means in which they perform their communication and get their collaboration efforts being done in correspondence. such that an organization, or such that they are able to make decisions and actually be able to converse upon their projects and tasks. Capabilities, again, are the reasons why these virtual teams are being used today in the 21st century. And that's what they're used for, again, for their capabilities in order to move a project or a product forward in a company's initiatives. Okay, overview of the problems. So, what are the problems that some of these virtual teams having? Well, one of those problems that they have today is less time for relationships. So a lot of these guys don't get a chance to know each other outside of being on that project. They're not usually right beside each other and working next to each other. So a lot of times these guys don't really get to know each other other than the tasking that they're collaborating on. And then they have their own work separate from the tasking of being on the virtual project. Speed of decision making. Again, you can't look next to your neighbor and ask a question and get back on a certain item. A lot of times it's through collaboration, should I say correspondence, email, text messages, or some kind of communication by way of phone. Sometimes a telephone tag or something else that's going on there. So the speed of decision making sometimes is have a little back and forth conversations in regards to that. Lack of participation. Sometimes if ones get caught up on their own work and they have other things they're working on, sometimes they're not participating as fast in getting some information to the other colleagues that's on the team or members on the team or leadership. You have different styles of leadership. So basically, leadership has to have more collaboration, or should I say more communication with members, each member on the virtual team. So if leadership have a different style on which someone on the virtual team is not totally on board with, then that might be another hindrance in having the virtual team be able to be managed effectively and being able to communicate effectively to each other. And again, a lot of these colleagues have never met before. So with them not being able to meet beforehand and know each other, if they actually get a chance to do that at that time, that's a great thing. But not every time does that happen, because again, a lot of them are geographically spaced. Okay, objectives and target audience. So we're looking at a virtual team and managing product success. That's the objective here. We're looking at actually a virtual team and how it actually works with managing product success and also project success. And also virtual means of members and how they interact with each other while they're working on the virtual projects. Also understanding the extent of centralized virtual team, centralized virtual venture team and virtual teams. We're talking about the leadership and how they facilitate these teams, and the management and measuring the effectiveness of the virtual teams. So what are we getting out of them? And when we have a project that the company wishes to engage upon. Okay, so marketing research technique, we're talking about the Delphi method and a structured questionnaire, qualitative and quantitative measures and success, and measuring the success and of the virtual team, and also the product or project that they're working on. We're also looking at surveys, questionnaires, interviews, and observations, and a narrative analysis by the use of an SSDS tool. Existing data sources, a research library of business. They have ABI, I think, databases that are in there, items for business, items for accounting. So there's external resources that are being used in order to collect information. In addition, you have internal resources that can be used from a company. Transportation costs are examples, or statistics on expenditures and accounting information. Okay, so sampling strategy here. So I took a sampling strategy of like 60 virtual team members. And basically with a standard deviation error of 5%, you have a confidence level of 95. And the random convenience, I'll use the random convenience sample technique. Consisting of 10 questions with an average of 10-minute response time. So basically, we're talking about 30 days, but at the same time for this all to be done, but at the same time, we're talking about 10 questions with an average of 10 minutes response time. Basically also items of 1 through 5 as far as how strongly they feel about a particular question, but also there's a comment field for a catch-all in case you have to think about it and have to put some additional information in later. Okay, so primary data collection analysis. We're talking about primary data being the questionnaire. You have the interviews as well. And also we're talking about how we're setting up the table for these questionnaires to be provided to the participants in the virtual teams. And this is actually done by male and females. We have 30 males, 30 females with a total sample of 60, and for each question. So we're going to go 1 through 10 on that. The primary data collection and analysis, again, back to being questionnaires, interviews, and observations. Observation is more likely a catch-all that's going to be through leadership that's provided, what they're seeing while they're managing the virtual teams. Okay, so primary data collection and analysis continue. So we're talking about, do you enjoy working on a virtual team? Some of these questions here. Do you feel like you're communicating enough with your leader? Do you feel like your team's capabilities to complete the task? Is your team efficient for product development tasking? Do you feel you are selected appropriately for your project tasks? Do you enjoy communicating with your virtual team members? How much would you be willing to be a virtual resource again? Do you enjoy your assigned tasks? Were you treated well by leadership and other team members? And do you believe the virtual team management can improve? So estimated timeline and cost. So we're talking about, again, the research project we're talking about is like 30 days and getting these questionnaires and also interviews and talking to the individuals as well, because we're going to talk to them as well to ask if anything that they think they can do to improve the project or any other way they would like to convey information to us. And at the same time, we're talking about updates being provided monthly to leadership. So every 30 days, we'll do this after 30 days, we'll provide that information to leadership. Okay, so we're talking about setting up objectives and target audience is 2 days, planning market research techniques, 3 days, sampling research population, 5 days, collecting primary data, 15 days, analyzing the data, 4 days, and concluding in a day. And then we're going to go further, and we're going to say, hey, we got personal expense for hiring. That's going to be $8,000. We're talking about primary data collection itself, $2,500. A sampling research population expense of $500. Data screening, $500. Analyzing the data screening, $1,500. That's with the SSDS tool that we spoke about earlier. Software would be $5,000, having a total of $18,000. Though approved. Okay, ethical considerations here. Objective survey questionnaires. Honesty, competent sampling management, voluntary contributions, and questionnaires are unbiased, making sure there's objective ones there, objective questions. Participants, privacy protected, civil equalities, an equal number of males and females. So we want to make sure that all information is being asked to them and conveyed back to management are going to be unbiased and where we can get the most information out of the individuals, out of participants, but at the same time, the questionnaires are not leaning more in one way or another towards a particular question. At the same time, the people who are providing the sampling of the questions and also the interviews are also unbiased as well, and how they're conveying information. So the participants feel free, the respondents feel like they convey that information back without having to feel persuaded in any kind of way and going one way or another with their answer. Okay, further considerations, we're going to retain the employees with competent skill sets and for product development. And also, we want to remain honest about everything and making sure that we keep a situation that is unbiased and actually professional and keeping integrity. At the same time, keeping questions to be unbiased, the voluntary contributions, making sure that we give them some understanding or maybe even rewards for their voluntary contributions. Also, we protect the participants' privacy, making sure that none of the information that they provided to us is actually, it's all anonymous, or should I say, more likely, even if we know who provided that information is protected from others that do not have a need to know, and the information won't get back to anyone that is not supposed to, and being used for the purposes as intended. Okay, now we're going to open this up to questions and answers. If you have any, please let me know. Thank you for your time.